Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next in our series of Honourable Company of Gloucestershire Business Group conversations. We're holding these with members of the company, specifically to start with members of the business group. And I'm very pleased to welcome and thank Michael Jones, who joins us today. Michael's a member of the business group and a businessman with experience in the public and private sector, and specifically perhaps in the automotive and aerospace industry. And Michael, perhaps we could start there. I know you've a view that despite everything, companies are adapting and rising to the challenge. And I wondered what your experience and observations have been in those two industries, which have a relevance for the county.
Well, if I may, I'll concentrate on aerospace, that being the most recent experience. But if you look at the share price, for example, of GE, my old company, it did go through rather a sharp decline, but it has recovered to a very large extent to almost where it was before the pandemic. Not quite the same, but almost the same. If you look at the share price of Lockheed, for example, that also went through a dip, but has recovered to where it was. My feeling on both of those are because particularly Lockheed is very much a military-based organisation, and it hasn't been particularly affected by the pandemic.
Right.
GE, on the other hand, is balanced between both civil aircraft and military aircraft. So military aircraft has helped out, yeah, but it has been affected significantly from the effects of the pandemic. Looking at the local company, one of my local companies was the Smith's company in Bishop's Cleeve. Now I've been in touch with those guys, and they have converted an entire building on the Bishop Cleeve site from civil aerospace to medical.
Oh,
and
right.
They did that during the first part of the pandemic, and obviously helped to supply a lot of equipment into the NHS. So they were quite agile in converting their business manufacturing in the UK from a civil aircraft to a medical. Now they're able to do that because GE have got a medical base anyway.
Right.
But that is a really good advantage that that local company had.
But there was obvious agility there, and people sometimes wonder whether big companies can be as agile as small companies. But you're saying that they can if they've got the underlying capacity.
I strongly believe that. I also believe that their underlying business as well affects them significantly, and that affects their agility as well. If you look at poor old Airbus and to some extent Boeing, they are both, particularly Airbus, civil aircraft type companies. Airbus made a decision some years ago to build that huge airliner in order to cash in, as it were, on the hub-to-hub business. Well, passengers have moved away from the hub-to-hub environment and prefer flying from point to point. So a local not necessarily local, but a London based airport to, if they want to fly to Miami, they want to fly to Miami. If they want to fly to Tampa, they want to fly to Tampa. They don't want to go to a hub. And hence Boeing cashed in on that.
Right.
So their underlying profitability has been affected by their long-term philosophy. Both of those companies are struggling to recover though.
Okay, and as indeed will be their suppliers, their supply chain, the smaller, yes, companies that are supplying them.
Yeah.
And presumably there has to be agility within those smaller companies too. Do you get a feel for how the supply base for those companies is responding?
I have got some clue, and I think I'm always the optimist anyway, because I think the companies that look at the current situation and are capable of seeing an opportunity within that predicament will be the companies that will be successful going forward. And I think a lot of the companies are agile. It depends very much on their manufacturing base or their own supply base as to whether they can switch production and cash in on another area. I mean, in the UK, the textile industry worked very well, and the plastics industry worked very well in switching to producing a lot of PPE for the national health. So it really depends upon the underlying capability of their manufacturing facility. Yeah. But if they can, I strongly believe, and because I'm the optimist, that they will do so, and they will do so fairly rapidly.
So what are the lessons to be learned? Presumably they are in building resilience into your company, having an element of inbuilt flexibility to look to changing markets.
Yes, and I also think the markets do change, but I think it's more evolution than revolution, because if you take the civil aircraft industry at the moment, people are not flying, and maybe there will be a reduction in business travel in the future, because we're now used to working from home much more than in the past, and we've worked out that it can happen, and it's not that difficult. But I strongly believe that people do like to go and meet people. They like to press the flesh, as it were. So I think a lot of business travel will resume, and we've got as a wanderlust anyway, and there will be a pent-up desire, and perhaps I'm speaking from a personal point of view now, to travel. I cannot wait for the airlines to get back to normal so that I can go traveling on vacation again. So I think there's a pent-up market desire as well. So I don't necessarily think there will be a huge swing away from air travel. I think it will come back far quicker than a lot of people and a lot of the pundits anticipate.
Yeah. No, and I think it's interesting, in just being terribly parochial and thinking about the honourable company, there is a great desire, nice though it is to talk on Zoom and better than nothing, there's a great desire to actually meet people and chat and exchange experiences and network and work for Gloucestershire in person rather than via Zoom.
Well, that's very true. And I mean, from a personal point of view as well, as you know, I was a founder member of the honourable company, and then I decided to concentrate on my livery company in town, and I left, and I've returned, and I was allowed to return, thank you very much, recently, but I feel as though I haven't rejoined yet, because I've not physically met anybody. No. It's a very strange sensation.
I think that's right. I think we're using up a store of knowledge of people that we acquired before the lockdown to see us through this. And as you say, when new people or people come back or emerge, it's difficult to get to know people as well over Zoom. But leaving that, can I just, we've only got a few minutes left, but I just wanted to see if we could pluck some of your experience overseas, because I know with the aerospace industry, you've had some experience in China. And I wondered if you had any perspectives on whether industries in China, perhaps specifically aerospace, are responding better than we are here. Is there anything we can learn from there?
I think a lot of the companies in China now have returned to some level of normality. At least I get that from my colleagues that I'm still in touch with. Incidentally, I must thank them profusely, because they sent me a vast supply of masks early on. I must have a couple of hundred of them. So if anybody's short, if you just let me know.
Right, spread them around the company, yeah.
So no, I think they've basically returned to some level of normality. But I think in the early stages, they were incredibly strict It's a very authoritarian regime. And if the government tell you to stay home, you stay home. You do not argue, and you do exactly as you're told, because the penalties are quite severe.
Yeah.
And they did tell me very recently that they've already started the vaccination program, but they've done it exactly the opposite to ourselves. They're starting with the population that are at work,
yeah,
in order to give them a level of immunity, because they feel if they give that population a level of immunity, then it will protect the older generation. Because a lot of the older generation live with the younger generation. That's not quite the trend now, but I mean,
yeah.
that still occurs a lot. But it's interesting that they switched the priorities around totally the opposite to ourselves.
Yes, that's interesting. From my limited knowledge of East Asian cultures, Chinese cultures, they have much more respect, firstly, for their older generation, and have a greater tradition of looking after them in their old age. And I can understand the thinking that they can protect the older generation by making sure they're not exposed to a younger generation with virus. Michael, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for your perspectives. As always, we could carry on talking about this for ages, and it will be very interesting to see whether your predictions that normal, that we get back to whatever that is, will not look as different to the previous normal as some people think have said, and I think you're probably right. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you all very much for watching. We'll be making some more of these conversations. I hope you're finding them useful. And please let us know at the Honourable Company if you have any comments about how we might do this or do it better or differently. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you again, Michael.
Thank you very much indeed.